My guest in this episode is Juliette Kayyem. Juliet is a national leader in homeland security, crisis management, and public policy. She's currently a senior lecturer at Harvard's Kennedy School and a national security analyst for CNN, where she's been called their go-to expert for disasters. Her recent book, The Devil Never Sleeps, explores disaster preparedness and response. She served as President Obama's Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security and has held senior roles in Massachusetts government. She's a Pulitzer finalist and a Telly Award winner and an expert on security, resilience, and crisis planning. In the private sector, she's the CEO of Grip Mobility and a senior advisor at Teneo, consulting with top companies on security and cybersecurity. She is also a frequent speaker, consultant, and board member with a background in law and a passion for public service. She's married to First Circuit Court of Appeals Chief Judge David Barron and is the proud mother of 3 children. Let's dive right into this episode with Juliette Kayyem. What's the number one threat to our country in terms of homeland security right now?
I would say right now, I think it is violence or the threat of violence as the accepted extension of our policy differences. It has entered our dialogue. It has entered our public space. Questions about even elections happening, the free and fair elections happening, the restrictions on a president running for a 3rd term, the use by elected leaders and their billionaires of targeted dismay at judges and their families, congresspeople and their families. All of it surrounds our discourse in a way that I've never seen before in my lifetime.
You answered the next question as well.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you had ever seen this many variables.
No, look. You know, in the both sides worlds, I'm supposed to say left-wing violence and blah blah. Look, you know, look at people on the street and looting during the George Floyd riots. The difference now is that it's state authorized, permissive from the government. You cannot compare an activist or a nihilist during the George Floyd riots who wants to break windows, or even someone who's destroying Teslas now. All wrong. Violence is wrong. Destruction of property is wrong. To a political endorsement of violence, January 6th, and its forgiveness. Like, let's not forget, it's not just that January 6th happened. They've now all been pardoned. So you've created this permissive structure, let alone the ability of these guys to go out again. It's apples and oranges, and people will demand both sides ism, but you can't compare them. I mean, so
no, you can't. Where does Elon Musk fit into the picture in terms of a national security risk?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so I mean, there's a couple pieces to it. I mean, one is he controls information in a way that we've never seen before. In particular, it's not just Twitter, because people can get off Twitter, Starlink. He controls a capacity for nations to communicate, in particular in times of crisis, as we've seen with Ukraine, and then has the ability to threaten it. Now, what you're seeing with Elon, though, is that it's very hard to manage national security with commercial interests, because the market will turn away from you if they don't like what you're doing. So what you're starting to see with Tesla and even Starlink, as some countries move away from it, is that. The fact that we do not know who the members of Doge are, what their security clearances are, who's paying them, what foreign countries are paying them. I have no doubt, and I'm willing to say this, because they're young, because they're unsophisticated, because they're cocky, one or more of them will end up in jail in my lifetime, because there's no way that you can have that kind of power and access to information and not disclose it, get paid for it, and all that stuff. Their cockiness is going to get them in jail. So, I mean, I don't like them, but if I were their mother, because I'm old enough to be their mother, I would say one of you is ending up in jail, and I don't want it to be you. The third is, of course, who is he, and why does he get to make these decisions? So that gets to the Democratic norm side of this. Congress passes budgets, programming, policies. And Elon Musk, under the guise of efficiency, though he's given up that guise, is basically going after progressive, not even progressive, like the post World War II entitlement state. And entitlement makes it sound bad. I'm talking about Social Security. I'm talking
Sure.
about Medicare. I'm talking about, yeah. So
Right.
in that way, he's becoming an Article 1, which is the legislative, figure, but only Congress can fix that. And they can fix it. I mean, tiny violin for these guys, like, you can fix it.
Do you have any hope? Because we hear rumblings from within the GOP
Yeah.
that some are starting to feel like Trump's pushing this way too far, or
Yeah.
Musk and Trump. Do you have any real hope that Congress will?
Well, it's interesting. Like, I've been thinking a lot. I mean, you mentioned I'm on, TV, and I'm with The Atlantic, and I'm, on NPR a lot. Like I've been thinking a lot, as I'm sure you have with the podcast, like, about what does engagement mean with all this noise? Like, how can one be purposeful? I try to stick to my lane. And I've come to describe what we are in now, not as a resistance with a capital R. And I think, like, that was Trump 1.0. Part of it was he didn't win the popular vote. And there was a lot of evidence that he had gotten support by the Russians to help him win. I don't know what that looks like, but at least in the investigations, that was true. So that it seemed like this was an illegitimate president, in a way that he may seem illegitimate now, but he won the popular vote, and there's no accusation of a foreign power coming in. So then what does that mean? I think the resistance takes a lot of little R's, and one of them is going to be, how do you get the GOP to assert its constitutional checks and balances? We're not seeing it now. We might see it in the days to come. I mean, I look at this, I'm not in the political space, I'm in the security space, but I look at this, I go, what's the theory? And, I know everyone was mad at him, and we're not allowed to speak well of him on the Democratic side, but maybe Chuck Schumer's strategy is right, which is Democrats shouldn't own anything. Let this administration fall on its own sword. And when he gets below 40%, he will lose his party.
And that's interesting, because I've been particularly hard on Chuck Schumer for
Yeah.
that decision. And yet, there are some things we just can't know until
Yeah.
we know.
He had a strategy. I mean, I will give him this, right? Like, he's getting, everyone's mad at him, and, like, my kids, and I was sort of annoyed at it too, because you wanted the assert. But if you're thinking of the strategy as the Democrats are unpopular enough, we need to build, I'm a Democrat, I'm, more center than left of center, but we need to build a party. We don't know what that looks like. You can't fight someone with no one, right? Which is the challenge we have right now. But the party cannot own his demise or be blamed for his demise. You cannot, with a straight face now, say that the Democrats have anything to do what's happening now. And that was Schumer's strategy. And you can think it was risky, but I don't know, on Monday, April 7th, I mean, there's no one saying Chuck Schumer owns this, right? It's
Sure.
I'm talking on a day in which the stock market is responding to the tariffs.
Right. In terms of, like, when you are looking at homeland security issues, how much does that involve foreign involvement, or the ratio in terms of what's going on within the borders of the United
Yes.
States and what's going on in connection to other countries.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, I mean, there's a difference between risk and impact. So there's lots of things that are going to have a tremendous impact in the United States that we need to view as, homeland security, in particular climate. Like that's just going to be, you know, and we can try to mitigate it, but we're just going to have climate disasters. We have to be better ready for them. We have to do all sorts of things that are responsive to that. But, Homeland Security is really about borderless threats. It's about, I mean, we'll have domestic threats, but we'll also have, eggs coming in from Canada, or who knows, measles probably started in Mexico, or the measles outbreak now, or radicalization starting, with ISIS, let alone the state sponsored attacks like we see with cyber. So I don't really think about it in terms of like interior exterior. I mean, this is the thing about the border that's so absurd about the way I think Trump talks about it, is because the borders, given our society, are about secure flow. You have to have both of them, right? You have to have flow. I mean, whether it's people, goods, ideas, resources, whatever. And the security part, if you just talk about that in isolation, doesn't make any sense. And we're about to see that. And so the way to think about Homeland Security is more about how I describe it as the secure flow of people, goods, ideas, and networks, so that you're putting an emphasis on our connectivity rather than the walls. And it's just a different way of thinking about it than I think the Trump administration has.
Interesting. I know a couple of people who were former tier one operators
Yes.
okay, and on the discussion of going after the cartels, they both tell me that will not work out well for the United States in terms of they think we will see a sharp spike in violence within the United States. You have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think like we don't know what's going to happen. We know there's going to be elections in well, tier one, you mean like critical infrastructure?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, these were former SEAL Team 6
Oh,
members who had functioned in that world and know in depth the devastating power and tactics of the cartels and how
yeah,
many of them are here in the United
yeah.
States.
I think that's right. I mean, I think, and that's a traditional law enforcement effort. I mean, I don't. There's almost. I mean, think about it. The reason why we use SEAL Team 6 tactics is either because the host country is unable or unwilling to eradicate the threat. That's hard to say about Texas or Oklahoma or
Right.
California. Like everyone's interests align here. And so I'm all for lethal power in places that either, or I guess the third is they either welcome it, they won't do it, or they can't do it.
Sure.
And in those three cases, you then have an alignment of the kinds of force that you might want. But without those three, I think the governor of Arkansas, Governor Huckabee, would be more than willing to eradicate the cartels. And you don't need the kind of force that you're talking about on the response, let alone because the cartels are manageable. No one wants to say that, are manageable through a variety of means that do not require extra authority or honestly, extra judicial activity.
I couldn't agree more. Now, let me be, I was too vague in that. Let me be
Yeah.
more specific. Regarding Trump's previous threats of going after the cartels in Mexico
Yeah.
with possible
Oh,
military
right,
assets
right.
and the relationship between if that happens and then what the cartel framework within the United States,
Yeah.
would we see a terrorism type response to that?
Um, You mean by us?
Well, by the Mexican cartel. In other words, in response to us taking targeted
Oh,
military
right.
action.
Yes, I
Yes,
think it would be. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think the 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 cartels exist because of our insatiable appetite for drugs and guns. Honestly, that's the
sure,
market. What do cartels
sure,
do? We're the market.
right.
We're the demand side. And so the long-term solution to the cartels is something that, we may not experience in America. But I very much worry, especially as Trump becomes more unpopular, of what he might do with lethal force, in particular in an allied country. If Mexico does not welcome the use of military assets in their country, we abide by it. Otherwise, it's an invasion. And people can have all sorts of theories about why it's the right thing to do, and we need to do it against the war against drugs. It's an invasion. And the president who told us America first better be able to defend that.
I want to ask you something. I've done the research on it to my satisfaction, but you're smarter than I am, so I'm going to ask you the question. I see on social media quite often people posting things, and I realize a lot of this is just out of desperation.
Yeah.
We are looking for a superhero, but I'll see comments where people say, it's time for the United Nations to step in, or NATO,
Yeah.
and arrest Trump. I,
Ah,
I've looked at
not
that.
going to happen.
Right, right. It's
Yeah.
just it's not there.
No. I mean, this ends. Look, the haters of Trump can pretend that there's like a single solution. If only we got this case, if only there were, it's not going to happen. He's a singular phenomenon. I don't think it's replicable. I mean, I do think, so this ends with elections. And this ends by ensuring that we have free and fair, and it ends by him losing big time. I mean, this is why I think he won't run for a third term. And then Vance will lose, and he will, because Vance owns all of this. I mean, Vance is out there on the tariffs, all that stuff. Vance will lose, and then he can say, see, it's
Sure.
only me, right? So I'm not. I think Trump throws out the third term thing because he wants to distract. But if Trump is many things, he's very, very politically savvy. If you're him, you are you're not running again. You're letting Vance lose, and then you were the greatest thing ever, right? If Vance loses, that's better for Trump in a weird way, in his weird ego way. Anyway, don't think any outside. I mean, I always tell like people that's like, we need to be out there. Like, you know what? I mean, yes, go out on the streets, protect students, have your institutions fight, be moral, be engaged, be in the arena, and singularly focus on 2026.
And that's refreshing to hear, because not too many people are just coming out and saying that. And I think one reason is it scares people, right?
Yeah,
To think, oh my God, it comes down to that, where it's iffy and
yeah.
it could go either way. Because again, everybody wants that superhero overnight fix.
Look, I mean, right. No, no, I think that's right. The overnight fix. That's exactly like, and we thought this in Trump 1.0, like, remember like people would be on TV and my network. I mean, people would be on TV and they'd be like, this is the case. He's going to jail. Like, like one court ruling is going to do that, or the Mueller report. And look, we realize that the norms were breakable, right? We've
Right.
got a lot to learn from this, but the eradication of parts of MAGAism. The MAGAism is going to always exist. I don't agree with it substantively. I don't know if it exists after Trump exits the public stage or passes away. But what I do know is that the violent, destabilizing elements of MAGA have to be eradicated in the ballot booth. And that's on the Democrats to figure out who's our messenger and what's our message.
Yeah. And I know in reference to the issue we were just talking about, you said, it's not like just a single issue. So I,
No.
I know that you think in terms of the full picture and the complexity. What two or three issues, looking back to the 2024 election,
Yeah.
what two or three issues do you think could have been addressed differently that might have made a
Yeah.
difference?
I have three: immigration, immigration, immigration.
Bingo.
And this is where I got on the other side of my party, right? For 3.5 years, uh, let me put it, Democrats tend to convince themselves that border security is a mythology of Fox News. And we still don't know how we want to talk about it, but we better start talking about asylum rules were being abused. The caravans were real, that the dysfunctional and permissive nature of a lot of our border enforcement policies were creating a magnet. And I know this because once Biden realized that this was a real issue, he was able to fix it 6 months from his election. So
Right.
we have to take on liberal and progressive groups. We have to understand that Hispanic, Arab, Asian communities are not thinking about immigration in the same way that white progressives might be. And we better figure out what this policy is. How are we going to talk about immigration? How are we going to talk about border enforcement? And then how are we going to implement it? And there's some interesting Democrats out there now who are doing that, especially from border states, like the new senator from Arizona. Why did I forget his name? Hispanic guy.
Yeah,
You know who I'm
I'm at a
talking
loss for
about.
the name too, but
Yeah.
yes, I
Anyway,
do know.
so he's talking about what the community thinks about. And it's very different than the talking points of the liberal elite in New England,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It is. When, in this case, it was President Biden, but with any president, when it takes them so long to get on board with realizing, in this
Right.
case, the border, is that the result of them getting bad information, or is it the result of their own resistance and isolation?
I think it's the result of the whole groups phenomenon. I don't mean to blame the groups; they have done good. Is feeling that the groups represented the issue in a way that
Right,
they didn't, and I think that ends up being the big challenge.
right, right.
I think it's the groups came to really be asylum groups, right? Groups that were focused on asylum. Well, the border is much more complicated than that. It's about
Certainly.
flows and enforcement and right. But
Right.
if the Democratic policy after this is, you know, interior enforcement has been horrible, ICE is horrible. Like no one's going to doubt that. You got to finish the sentence, which is ICE's priority in a Democratic administration is going to be workplace enforcement.
Yeah, that's
Period.
it.
We're not going to go after schools. We're not going to go after, we might eventually, right? But it's going to be workplace enforcement and real criminals. And it's not going to be this BS of putting innocent people in jail in El Salvador, which they're taking up to the Supreme Court. I mean, you know, that's how scary it is about what they think their authority is. Uh, they've admitted that they made a mistake with one of these guys, one of the Venezuelan guys.
Right. I'm going to ask you this question. It may
Yeah.
seem from left field, and my subscribers are probably going to give me a hard time for even posing this question. But is there the chance, as absurd as it sounds,
Yeah.
is there the chance that somewhere down the road that it's undeniable and that some of these things Trump has done
Mm-hmm.
actually have benefited the country in any way?
I was accused the other day of being too. I think Trump is a political genius in the way in which he can assert or capture a discontent.
Right.
And
I agree.
in that way, I think he was right about the border. I mean, I think he's right about conditions-based disaster relief. Where he's always wrong is in what the solution specifically should be.
Makes
So
sense.
it's
Yes.
not, going to mosques or whatever, or um, or conditioning California's relief on them changing their voting rules, right? So I do think, like, if a Democrat came in and said, I think Trump was right about X, Y, or Z, his solutions, though, I mean, about exposing that we need to fix this, here's my solution. We cannot be on defense. I mean, this is, I keep yelling, who's doing, I mean, we've got to win the elections, but who's doing Project 2029?
Yeah. And is that what Gavin Newsom is attempting to do?
Maybe. I'm not sure he's the one. I mean, he's getting better. I mean, I thought in the early ones of his podcast, I thought he was like a little bit too dumbstruck by the pod boys of the right wing. I
Right.
think he's getting a little bit better. But I think I applaud him, as I do others, who are trying to figure out, trying to fill spaces, and then also tell the story of why government matters. We've got
Yes.
to tell that story. So, because the Republicans are telling that story, and it's not a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you somebody who will probably be in the running, or I assume, who seems to have a very balanced way of talking about things. And I'd like your
Yeah.
feedback on that. J.B. Pritzker.
Yeah, I think Pritzker is good in that sense, is that he's tough, but he's action oriented. I like the governors. I mean, I really do. I like Bashir. Um, I'm good friends with him, but I like various governors throughout. So there are a number of governors, and maybe even retired governors who will jump in. But I mean, we can't. Oh, sorry, that was Amara. That was who's been talking. She's like, "Did you find him?" Yes, I found him. Sorry,
Good.
I had turned that off. Okay. She's reminding me I have a 2 o'clock. I'm sorry
Gotcha.
for that. It got
Yeah.
interrupted in it, but let's start that answer over. Um, Look, I like what Gavin Newsom is doing in the sense of he's trying to fill spaces that we've avoided, Democrats have avoided. And I think a lot, as I was saying to you earlier, about like, how do you want to engage? Like, who's watching these things? Who's listening to these things? Do we need to engage on their level? How are our kids getting information, like
Right.
YouTube, all this stuff? So I think that's good. I may not always like the contours of it. And I think it's good that that's coming from governors, right? And so if you think of someone like J.B. Pritzker, Bashir from Kentucky, obviously Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. You've got the Joshes, Josh Stein and Josh Stein in North Carolina and Josh in, oh my God, in Pennsylvania. Good morning. You've got a lot of really interesting characters, but we've got to learn how to say the narrative of why
Yes.
government matters.
Yes.
And why it's meaningful in people's lives, because they're figuring it out right now. I
Right.
mean, we're a lot, everyone says the rich get richer. Everyone's getting poorer today, April 7th.
Yes. Well, listen, I agree that it's good that they're speaking out too, and I also think it would be good if you make your 2 o'clock appointment.
I
So,
know. Thank you so much. You're
hey,
a sweetheart.
listen,
Sorry for the mix up at the beginning, but we
thank you
had,
so much, Juliet.
okay,
Maybe
good.
we can do this again someday.
Okay, wonderful. You have a wonderful time. Let us
You
know when
too.
it's up. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.